A new trailer of House of the Dragon just dropped, so let's break it all down shot by shot. First we see Daemon approaching the Iron Throne, which at first might seem out of place, with Daemon's enemies the Greens currently in control of King's Landing. So how or why would Daemon be here? It makes me think that this is probably a dragon dream. Some members of House Targaryen have prophetic visions of the future. These dreams are often misinterpreted, and the pursuit of the dream typically leads to the dreamer's downfall. Viserys, for example, had dragon dreams in Season 1 and believed he would have a son to unite the realm, but his interpretation was flawed and would eventually lead to the Dance of the Dragon's civil war. So like Viserys, Daemon's pursuit of the Iron Throne might lead to his end. While this is going on, Rhaenyra has a voiceover alluding to Aegon's prophecy of ice and fire, which was given to him in a dragon dream. Next, we see Jacaerys and Cregan Stark on the wall. Remember last season, Jace was sent to gather the support of House Arryn and House Stark. Notice that Cregan has ice, the Valyrian steel greatsword of House Stark, strapped to his back. Cregan was one of the greatest Stark warriors to have ever lived, so we might get to see him use the blade in the war. Cregan recently faced a civil war of his own, where his uncle was slow to give up power when Cregan came of age. Eventually, Cregan defeated his uncle, imprisoning him and his 3 sons. Having faced his own civil war, perhaps Cregan will counsel Jace on what he should do about the current Targaryen civil war, and will likely urge Jace to be decisive with his actions. We see Alicent wandering afield, and Rhaenyra's crown falls to the floor on Dragonstone. A shot of sea smoke, the mount of Laenor Velaryon, followed by 3 dragon eggs in the fire, a nod to Daenerys' 3 eggs later in the timeline. We see a shot of King's Landing with the small folk reaching out. They had a pretty rough time, with so many of them being killed during Aegon's coronation in Season 1, and things are only going to get worse for them in Season 2. There is a shot of a dragon overhead. Initially, I thought it looked like sea smoke, but based on the location, which we get more shots of later, I think it is probably Moondancer, the mount of Baelor Targaryen, one of Daemon's daughters. We see Aegon swaggering up to the throne. Rhaenyra picks up a sword from a table. We had previously seen this shot in a behind-the-scenes trailer, and some fans were speculating that the sword looked a little bit like Valyrian steel, which would be a pretty big change from the books. House Targaryen only possessed 2 Valyrian steel swords: Blackfire, the sword of Aegon the Conqueror, which was passed through the Targaryen kings, and Dark Sister, which typically went to the heir or a warrior deemed worthy. We see Daemon and Rhaenys decked out in their Targaryen armor, with Daemon stating his intention to go to King's Landing, but based on the books, he won't make it there, at least not this season. Aegon II holds a small council meeting, which seems to be after the events of Blood and Cheese, an assassination carried out against the Greens with massive ramifications. We see more shots of King's Landing, with Aemond and Alicent looking out over the city. I suspect in this moment, Aemond will admit to Alicent that Lucerys' death was an accident. Perhaps Alicent will urge Aemond to tell the truth to Rhaenyra in a final attempt to avert the war, but Aemond will refuse, having committed to the lie that he did it on purpose. And this conversation will cause Aemond to grow mistrusting of his mother, which is further reinforced later in the trailer. We see a shot of an army marching on Rook's Rest, the seat of House Staunton, one of Rhaenyra's allies. It is here at Rook's Rest that we will get a major dragon battle. We see Lannister knights riding for the Greens. We see shots of Baelor and her dragon Moondancer flying over a forested area. We see part of the Greens' army marching on Rook's Rest, with banners for House Stokeworth and Darkland fighting for Aegon. Daemon and Rhaenyra have a war council of their own, with Daemon stating he did not think the Greens would be so eager to die, likely referring to the Greens marching towards Dragonstone. We see a couple of Valyrian ships surrounding an unmarked vessel. Remember, at the end of Season 1, Corlys stated his intention to form a blockade at the Gullet to prevent vessels entering King's Landing in an attempt to limit the amount of food getting into the city. By doing this, the Blacks hope to starve them out and force the Greens to surrender. However, it will be the small folk who will truly suffer from this blockade, and things in King's Landing will quickly begin to unravel with rioting. We see Caraxes and Daemon leaving Dragonstone, with a voiceover from Daemon saying the realm's only hope is for a leader strong enough to unite them, implying that Daemon thinks he is this leader. Next, Rhaenyra asks if Daemon accepts her as queen and ruler, and Daemon pauses just a little bit too long. I believe this next dragon dragon is Sunfyre, the mount of Aegon II, as he leads his armies from King's Landing. Aegon is clad in some pretty cool Targaryen armor. Notice his crown has been fitted into his helmet. More shots of the Green Army marching on Rook's Rest. Alicent speaking with Aemond, which seems to further the rift between mother and son. Daemon lands on a crumbling structure, which is likely Harrenhal. Aemond talks with Criston Cole, saying his mother has sympathy for their enemies, which makes her a fool, further indicating the rift between the two. We see shots of some Night's Watchmen and another look at Cregan Stark and Jace. Given that the pair are at the wall, the topic of White Walkers will likely come up. It will be interesting to see if Cregan is at all aware of Aegon's prophecy. Some fans speculate that Aegon's knowledge of the White Walkers and the threat in the north is part of the reason why Torrhen Stark knelt to Aegon during the conquest, so this could make for an interesting scene. Next, Baelor and Moondancer flying across an open field, chasing Criston Cole, who is fleeing to the safety of this wooded area. We saw this in other trailers, but Criston Cole is wearing the Hand of the King chain. Rhaenyra looking emotional, and Aegon looking upset, likely after the events of Blood and Cheese. Next, we see the brothers Eric and Arik dueling. The Greens send Arik to Dragonstone to pose as his twin brother to get close enough to Rhaenyra to assassinate her, but unfortunately he runs into his twin and the pair end up fighting. Aemond shirtless, lying in the arms of a woman. Remember, this kid has a few mummy issues, so expect some interesting relationships between him and an older woman. I have no idea who this character stepping into the water is or what this could be, so if you know, comment below. This Velaryon character is Alyn of Hull, a bastard of Corlys Velaryon. I think these are just 3 random women likely in a brothel. This is Rhaenyra Targaryen, Daemon's other daughter. In season 1, she was dragonless and thus felt unloved by her father. In the books, she does eventually get a dragon, but I suspect that they might be blending her character with an important book character named Nettles, which seems like a massive mistake, but we will have to wait and see. Another shot of Baelor and Moondancer diving. A shot of some Greens troops getting roasted. There are Hightowers, Lannisters, Stokeworths, and Darklands. So this is probably again at Rook's Rest. The dragon doing the roasting being Meleys. Next we see Lady Mysaria, who survived Larys's attempt on her life last season. It looks like they have toned down her accent a bit, which was a common complaint from last season. She says there is more than one way to fight a war, implying it is not all done on the battlefield. Sometimes an assassin's blade is greater than any army, and that is exactly what we see next as Blood and Cheese make their way through Maegor's tunnels below the Red Keep. I'm pretty sure this is Daemon's ring, so we see Daemon and Rhaenyra clapping cheeks. Next, a blade being grabbed, possibly by Alicent. Maybe she is present during Blood and Cheese. Some gold cloaks trying to contain the riot in King's Landing. It looks like this is happening at the same time as a certain funeral, with Helena and Alicent having veils of mourning. More shots of Rook's Rest and soldiers fleeing under dragonfire. Next we see Rhaenys and Meleys above Rook's Rest decimating the Greens army. Aemond and Vhagar flying away from Meleys and her dragonfire, only for Vhagar to clap back with some fire of her own. And finally a shot of Rhaenyra with Vermithor. Vermithor is the second largest dragon behind Vhagar and currently is riderless. In season 1 we saw Daemon sing to him, likely preparing Vermithor to accept a new rider with that Valyrian song of old.